I'd like to introduce you to Trevor Dorling, who is the Managing Director of Digital Cities, Greenwich's, the Royal Borough of Greenwich's innovation company. And we're going to learn a lot. And is it all right if we ask questions at the end?
Of course, of course. Good afternoon. I go by many names. I really am the old man of new technology, I suppose. And I'm going to talk a bit about our work. I'm going to talk about two companies that the council has set up, and talk a bit about this smart city thing. I'm really interested that people have been playing golf and they're going to have this walk of shame when they come in. I understand the rules of golf. The ones who come in last don't win the Jaguar Land Rovers, which feels very kindly. In fact, we worked, one of the projects we worked with in BG Cities, it's called Move UK, and it was with Jaguar Land Rover. And the Jaguar Land Rover took and Bosch kind of converted the cars to run passively, autonomously, which basically means the car made decisions as if it was autonomous, but the cars were driven manually, if you're still with me. And it compared what the drivers did with what the autonomous systems did, which was probably one of the more exciting projects we've been involved in. So, and it was part of this ambition to make autonomous vehicles act more like kind of manually driven vehicles, which is a bit perverse really, isn't it? But that was a project that lasted for 2 or 3 years, a multi-million-pound project funded by Innovate UK, and is an example of one of the projects we do, which comes under this sort of umbrella of smart city innovation. So just to sort of start by saying, I think the majority won't know, but a few do know that I've been around Greenwich for quite some time. I joined the Royal Borough of Greenwich, I think 35 years ago, initially as a town planner. That's something I normally keep very quiet because I do like to get invited to parties. But more recently in the world of economic development, economic regeneration, and more recently still in this world of digital. And the motivation really was, I know this isn't just the Greenwich Chamber, but I'm very Greenwich-centric. For those that are not, I apologise. But Greenwich has got this fantastic history. You know, we once had 150,000 manufacturing jobs along the riverfront, and highly skilled jobs. I mean, not the dock jobs, which the kind of people kind of assume they were, but it really was a centre of a lot of innovation and technology. And it's an interesting contrast because north of the river at the docks really was the gig economy. People would turn up in the morning on the stones, see if there was any work to unload the ships. Whereas on this side of the river, it was very highly skilled. Royal Arsenal, Siemens, when the Siemens brothers first came to London, they set up their factory here. Not least because of the skilled workforce that was around. Now, 150,000 manufacturing jobs. Today, Greenwich has something like 2,000 or 3,000 manufacturing jobs. So over a generation, it's an incredible decline. And the motivation for me, and I think the council more generally, was that we'd done a pretty good job. Remember, I was involved in economic development, so I would say this, wouldn't I? We'd done a pretty good job of replacing the jobs that we'd lost from manufacturing. Not one for one, because you're not going to replace 150,000 manufacturing jobs, but a pretty good job at getting new businesses in, getting some very heavily contaminated land decontaminated. You know things like Millennium Dome with Greenwich, what have you. There was a big wake-up call about 8 years ago when some research was done which said due to automation that approximately 50% of the service sector jobs in Greenwich, was a service sector economy at that time, were under threat through automation and digitalisation. So we'd lost our manufacturing over a generation, and we were in real danger of losing a lot of our service sector jobs. And I think in the DNA of the council, it was very much this sort of fear as to sort of what would happen, because the council had been living with the consequences of this decline in industry. and actually didn't want to go through it again with the service sector. So rather than passively just observe, went on the front foot, and we started looking at digital and what it meant. It coincided with a number of things. It coincided with the Olympics and a partnership with Cisco. It coincided with the moving of Ravensbourne University to the peninsula, and they're quite digitally focused as well. So a number of things came together at that time, which sort of led us on this smart city journey. Does that mean you came in first? No. We're sort of intrigued as to who comes in first.
Alan is just joining us for lunch.
Just joined us.
No, I haven't been doing that stupid game.
Can you? There we go.
You don't get the Beatles bit.
I'm only here for the beer.
So really that sort of is the kind of journey that the council's been on, which is, you know, how can we understand the world of digital, and actually how can we flip it and actually use digital to the borough's advantage. So back in 2015, the council set up its own company, an innovation company, and that's called DG Cities, and today I'm the managing director of DG Cities. And more recently, it's set up another company, which is technically a subsidiary of DG Cities, which is called Digital Greenwich Connect, and that is putting fibre into Woolwich and is a joint venture with a company called ITS Technology. We'll come back to that in a moment. And this smart city thing, which isn't a great term, but nonetheless is one which is sort of, you know, just about accepted, is really about how we use technology to drive improvements in cities. So really that's what DG Cities does, is look at how we use technology to drive improvements in cities. Now we don't define what an improvement looks like. I mean, that sounds a bit perverse, but that feels like it would be technology push. We think this is all around how technology can underpin the objectives that others have, not least the people that live and work in cities. And we're very much driven by the fact that we believe councils, you know, have a community leadership role, and we're seeking to underpin their objectives, help them achieve the objectives, rather than set the objectives of what a good city actually is. DG Cities is a multidisciplinary team. It's quite small. Currently we have 10 staff. I know that because I counted them up, because we joined the chamber earlier in the week, and we must have saved at least £100 by not having 11. And we have a turnover next year. We have a turnover roughly of between £1 and £2 million a year. I think 2.5 million was the highest. And you know, the ambition isn't to sort of grow it for the sake of growing. You know, the ambition is really to make it sustainable, resilient, and able to adapt, which probably does mean that we need to sort of grow by at least double in the next few years. We're self-funded. It's been organic growth. We haven't taken on finance from anybody else. We don't get a grant from the council. So we have to generate the funds to grow the company. And we've been very successful, and I think probably we've helped the council secure more Innovate UK, the government's innovation agency, than probably any other council in the land. We're very successful at working with companies. I mentioned Jaguar, Land Rover and Bosch, but we've worked with a huge number of companies, and that's the essence to getting Innovate UK funding, is to be part of the consortia. And we've worked on things such as decarbonisation of housing, such as connecting autonomous vehicles has probably been a major, well, it certainly has been a major area for us. And innovation. And all of those are sort of pieces of the jigsaw, and we would say they make up a smart city, or a smarter city. And I'll come on to some of those in a moment. Probably in total, we're probably pushing about £100 million worth of funding that's been secured from Innovate UK. Now, not all of it, definitely not all of that comes to DG Cities, and not all of it comes to the Borough of Greenwich. A lot of it goes into the research which people like Cisco or Jaguar Land Rover or Bosch are doing. But nonetheless, a significant amount benefits the borough. We also work with universities, local universities, and also universities such as Loughborough and Imperial come to mind. So, I mean, I think I've talked a little bit about the motivation for setting up DG Cities, which started out very much, sound like Keir Starmer now, saying driven very much by economic growth. That's what we wanted to see. I come from an economic development background. But around about 2015, we had a change of direction, really. We sort of call it a pivot these days, which makes it sound good, but we kind of realised that we weren't quite barking up the right tree. We opened an innovation centre. We effectively put a flag on the building and said, this is an innovation centre, come and work with us, and many did. But it wasn't enough. And what we found was that the companies coming to talk to us were as interested in our understanding of how the city functioned and our relationship with Greenwich Council as they were with kind of technology per se. And they spent all their time looking out the window at this sort of, this is at North Greenwich, at the development that's happening, and wanting to understand really how the development happened, who they could talk to, how you can influence how things work. And we kind of realised that putting a flag on the building and saying this was an innovation centre wasn't enough. We needed to actually be focused on the borough and turn the borough into a place of innovation, and also be focused on the council. And so that took us from a position of we're interested in this generic thing, which is sort of digital growth, to smart cities. And that led us to producing a strategy in 2015, which had 4 pillars. I can remember those 4 pillars, it's still relevant today. Transforming the economy, transforming our infrastructure, transforming council services, and transforming neighbourhoods and communities. And that's very much become our mantra, that those are the areas we're working in. And DG Cities works with the council to support the transformation in those core areas. It underpins other plans. The council's in the process of preparing, I think, what sounds like it's going to be a very exciting corporate plan for the next 4 years. It doesn't rival this plan. This plan, the Smart City strategy, will underpin the council's corporate plans for the borough. I think DG Cities, just to sort of lock it in, is about working with clients from the public and private sector to use technology to transform places, cities, towns, neighbourhoods. We work in the borough, we work outside the borough, we worked internationally on that. So we form a bridge really between cities and citizens who have a need for cities to function better, or places to function better, and often technology companies who have many ideas but actually don't necessarily understand how cities work or how to embed them. We worked a lot in connected and autonomous transport, and that led to the creation of the Smart Mobility Living Lab, which was a journey that some others here have been involved on. Here in Greenwich, at Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, get that in, make a note of that, which is a £10-20 million investment in a national centre, which I genuinely find remarkable that that's located in Woolwich and QEOP, and puts us at the forefront of a technology which is going to transform the way we travel. And it will come. We can have an interesting discussion about when autonomous vehicles will be ubiquitous on our roads. A healthy debate about when that's likely to happen, but be in no doubt it will happen. And places like Thamesmead, I think people are here today, but are laying down the plans for buildings which won't, and areas which won't be completed for 30 years, and will still be here in 100 years' time. Nobody's any doubt that transportation will be autonomous in 100 years' time. They may not agree that it will be 20 or 30 years' time, but nobody doubts that it will be in 100 years' time. And what we're seeking to do is put local authorities at the heart of the debate about what we want autonomous vehicles to do. What we don't want, I would suggest, is to replace existing vehicles one-to-one with autonomous vehicles. I think autonomous vehicles will signal the end of private ownership of vehicles. An autonomous vehicle is a taxi, so why park a taxi outside your door for the occasions when you use it? Why not dive it up? So we would see a transition to much more shared transport, and we believe that there's an opportunity to use autonomous transport and the shift which will happen to reinforce public transport. So you want to go to Birmingham, it makes a lot more sense to go on a train, possibly an autonomous train, but it makes a lot more sense than to sit in an autonomous vehicle or go in a manually driven vehicle. What we need is to be able to get people on time to mass transit stations and with real-time information. So let's say you're going to the airport, you want to actually arrive half an hour before the flight takes off. Currently, if you go to Heathrow Airport, you've got no idea how long it's going to take you. In our autonomous future, we will know an autonomous vehicle can pick you up at that time. Or if you have a hospital appointment, you can be picked up at a time that your doctor will be ready to see you, and you can predict all that, and you can see that. It is a little science fiction, there is no doubt, but we as citizens should all be in that debate about what we want our transport to be like. We do not want our future to be determined by Uber or Google or Microsoft or the car manufacturers. And the car manufacturers have got a vested interest in particular models, not least private ownership, but they are all engaged in this autonomous journey and different models. And the chief executive of Ford in America sort of stood up and said we're witnessing the end of the demise of private ownership of vehicles, and in the future our customers will be cities. Let's discuss. But the key thing is that we're trying to put Greenwich at the heart of that, the Smart Mobility Living Lab, which is the Centre for Connected Autonomous Vehicles. There's a company, it's SML Limited, it's on the Royal Arsenal, landlord is Barclay Homes, and I hope very much that SML Limited will join the Chamber and that we can have an event there and learn more about what they are doing. Right, IoT and behavioural change is another area of work that we're involved in. Internet of Things, it's sort of Internet of everything really. I think people here will more than understand, but more and more devices have sensors in them of one sort or another, which have the ability to capture and transmit data. That enables us, for example, as a council, to change the relationship with our tenants. So instead of the tenant ringing up and saying my boiler's broken, and we have big debates about how we can automate that so they can do it online and don't have to ring us up and be in the queue. But in the future, we will be able to contact them and say we need to come out and repair your boiler because it's going to break down next week. And we better come, at what time would you like us to come? And if we don't come, it's there's going to be a flood. That saves the council money, it's better for the tenant because they can choose the time, they don't have the boiler broken down and so on. So that is a potential of an Internet of Things. And once again, we're seeking to put local authorities at the centre and our communities at the centre of that. Electrification and EV infrastructure, big issue, not irrelevant today by any means. We are working with the council's fleet and other fleets. We're doing some work in Devon as well, looking at how you can electrify your fleet, develop a business case for electrifying fleets, and also ensuring that there's optimum use of EV infrastructure. So in the council, if we put an EV infrastructure, 600 vehicles, if we put EV infrastructure in to charge up every single vehicle overnight, well, we would need probably a new power station and certainly a new substation, and it would be prohibitively expensive. But we can have distributed charging. We can put charging points in on our housing estates, for example, at people's homes, and actually spread the cost of that much more effectively, and also benefit residents as well as the council's own staff. Decarbonisation of housing. Most of the challenge around decarbonisation is in housing, and we're working on how you can. There's lots of pilot schemes. Greenwich is doing some good work. Others are too. We've put in quite an innovative water source heat pump We've got air source heat pumps going in, but they're pilots. You know, it's sort of scratching the surface. And what we're looking at is business cases and new ways of doing things. We've secured some money from BASE to look at the private sector market as well on the heat pump ready scheme. And another key area of work, and one of the pillars of our strategy, is around connectivity and digital connectivity. And Greenwich is certainly not alone, and this part of London is in a similar position, and indeed, quite remarkably for a capital city, London isn't well served by gigabit connectivity, which requires fibre. And it is improving, there's no doubt about that. There's a lot of investment going in. But over the last decade or more, we've been sort of served up fibre to the cabinet, not fibre to the premises, and that's the sort of has been the open reach model. And places like Woolwich, still get a lot of complaints from people that remarkably come to the council, that people cannot work from home, their businesses is undermined because of poor connectivity. And the council took a bold decision that it would intervene in the market, I suppose, and create a joint venture. And we looked at a number of options. One option was actually do nothing and complain. Another option was to sort of facilitate, try and work with the private sector. Another option was to actually do it ourselves and set up a kind of company, effectively a sort of connectivity company in its own right. The council took the option to set up a joint venture. So it's a commercial joint venture. The council's investing £1 million as it happens. So is our commercial partner investing £1 million. It's an initial investment on both sides to put fibre initially into Woolwich. We're just working through. We've selected our partner. The company has been formed. That's Digital Greenwich Connect. And in the next, probably the next 6 weeks or so, we'll have signed off what's called the detail, or the low-level design plans, and start putting fibre into the ground. The others will be two, so OpenReach will, and there's others in the market, hyper-optic, community fibre, all putting fibre into Greenwich. But they are cherry-picking, whereas our ambition is ubiquitous. It's all built into the business model. It's a pretty profitable area if you just cherry-pick. But we will be putting fibre into all premises in the Woolwich area. So for businesses in Woolwich, you will benefit greatly, and I know there's a conversation that we're going to be having with Moses, who've got their own plans in Woolwich. And that will provide up to 10 gigabit connectivity for businesses and residents in Woolwich, and something that we look to roll out to other areas in the future. But it is a commercial investment, so it has to give a return on that investment. We would have some challenges in relation to UK public subsidy rules if it weren't a commercial investment. And that's taken us a long time to go through that process. We're also working with the other providers as well. So it's going to be a mixed economy. So we're encouraging other investment via OpenReach and so on. And we're also working with the mobile providers as well. So as again, if you're in the Borough of Greenwich, we're currently talking to I think all the main mobile operators and the companies they work with to put small cells onto street furniture probably over the next sort of 12 months or so. And that will provide better 4G mobile connectivity, which still remarkably is poor in parts of the borough, and also future-proof for 5G and 6G connectivity as well in the future. The fibre that we're putting in through the joint venture is about 24 kilometres of fibre. I should also say, although this isn't anything which DG Cities is involved in, that the council is embarked upon an ambitious digital transformation programme. It's led by another team entirely in the council, which is looking at how it interacts with the businesses and residents in the borough to streamline things significantly, and how we make better use of the data as a council as well. So over the next decade, it's exciting times, and I think I sort of indicated at the beginning, the DG Cities set up. Interesting, you know, we sort of set it up without real clarity around the business plan and where the funding would come from, and really what the business was, which is not an ideal way to set up a business. But we spent a number of years working that out. We've been fortunately been able to benefit from Innovate UK funding, which has really given us the sort of breathing space to develop our own understanding of the market and where we sit into it. So our plan is to expand. Our plan is to go from 10 staff to roughly 25 staff in 3 years and triple turnover. We'll continue to work in the Borough of Greenwich and South East London, but we consider that to be our spiritual home. I don't think that's going to change. We continue to be owned by the Royal Borough of Greenwich. I didn't say this, I don't think. So it's a company limited by shares. The sole shareholder is the Royal Borough of Greenwich, DG Cities. But we do tend to diversify who we work with, and we're increasing our client base with the commercial sector as well, because that generates more profit. When we work with the public sector, we do it at cost. When we do work for Innovate UK, we do it at cost. The only way we generate serious surplus is to work commercially. We need to do that to be able to reinvest the money. You'll be very familiar with that. And we kind of aim to further enhance our reputation as experts in this sort of smart city thing, and where we fit in. And we're also keen to collaborate, so that's clear. You know, we're having some discussions locally with businesses. We've worked with some developers, some in the borough, some outside the borough, who are on a similar journey really, which is how can technology improve the places that they're creating. And you know, we're keen as a company to work with others who are kind of creating places to kind of future-proof them in many regards. Whether that's things like electrification and planning the right level of infrastructure, whether it's future-proofing digital connectivity, whether it's using Internet of Things technology. I gave the example of the boiler, but there's plenty of other examples. So we aim to sort of bring in the best experience. We work with lots of technology companies, and you know, agnostically, we don't sort of push one company or anything like that. But we sift through the market to try and find what we think is most relevant and interesting. We're also very keen to work with local companies. So if there's companies involved in that space in any shape, manner or form, as I've said, we're pretty good at getting Innovate UK funding, always in partnership, so that we can help there, and we're happy to do so. DG Connect, so a new company set up in May this year, so very, very recent. Joint venture, as I've said, with ITS Technology. They're backed by Aviva Investments. There's no shortage of investment behind them, so our plan is to actually oversee a successful rollout of the fibre build, see successful take-up, because that's what it is all about, that people are using that fibre, and then look to expand that into other parts of the borough as well. And I think there's an interesting kind of space there where the technology sort of providers are good at doing what they do, but they're not necessarily good at envisaging kind of future places. So part of our brief in the company at the moment is to kind of plan and envisage the high street of the future, for example. You know, technology is undoubtedly impacting negatively on high streets, about how can we use technology to sort of fight back, essentially, but also neighbourhoods of the future as well, and housing being a key part of that. And for the borough, we hope very much that the connectivity will improve the business conditions in the borough for companies, help attract more businesses, help attract high-skilled businesses and high-growth businesses, as well as helping the businesses that are here at present. We are also looking at the creation of a series of test beds. Early days, we've got the Smart Mobility Living Lab, which is a test bed for connecting autonomous vehicles and smart mobility. We're looking at something similar for housing and energy, working with sort of key commercial partners to actually apply new approaches into housing. And to reinforce really once again that we're very keen to collaborate. We're very keen that you help us on our journey. And it's going to be more relevant to some businesses than others, but you know, the aim has always been to support the Greenwich economy, support Greenwich Council, and that, you know, that will go a lot better working with you guys and pulling you guys in into our discussions. So I think that's all I really wish to say. I kind of leave you with the thought that you know, DG Cities has joined the chamber a little late in the day. I apologise. The intention is that DG Connect or Digital Greenwich Connect will join the chamber, and if you agree, we can get a presentation from people at the Digital Greenwich Connect, and maybe it's just a subset for those people that are Greenwich based, I don't know. And also we're talking to Smart Mobility Living Lab, SMLL, about joining the chamber and also hosting